Hello everybody, I am Tom and you are watching a Warframe build guide. I say guide, it's not a guide per se. This series I'm just going to go through all of the Warframes and show you what builds I use on them. So if I'm ever doing a mission or something in Warframe and doing a video for it, if you need a reference for what my build is, chances are it's going to be the one that I show you. I'm going to do a Warframe per video essentially. I'm probably going to try and release them like once a week, thereabouts. And I'm going to go alphabetically through them, and I'm gonna go what my build is and how that build tends to go in like the most common mission types. Today's episode is Ash. First things first, I want to show you what my build is. I'll get straight to the point. This build here is built pretty much entirely, as you can see, 200% efficiency is 200% duration is built for his invisibility. So, invisibility is as long as possible. He has like 145 power strength and 175% efficiency, so you can use your invisibility and your 4, which is called something that I can't remember the name of. What's this 4 actually called? Bladestorm, that's right. And you can use your Bladestorm, does 2900 damage, slightly lower range, but 1.5 energy per mark, usually, because you're pretty much always invisible, and if not, 3 energy per mark. I also have his Fatal Teleport here, because I enjoy being able to just kill a big enemy if it's there. Just hit 3 and it dies. Pretty much. But, we got Corrosive... I'll actually go through each of these, just so, for those who are new to the game and don't know what these do. Corrosive Projection. This is... Okay. This is a mod that reduces enemy armor. So essentially, it's really good when you're fighting Grineer. If you're not fighting Grineer, it's a lot yet less useful, in which case you can replace it with Energy Siphon, which just gives you passive energy regeneration. This is Ash Prime, and he has 2 Former. If you wanted to do the same thing on regular Ash, you would require 3 Former to do this. Worth noting. Although, honestly, I think Ash Prime might be easier to get than Ash, in all honesty, because Manics aren't common for a new player to run into. Power Drift. This is my movement mod, and it gives me ability strength and chance to resist knockdown. This you can find this you can find after a certain part in the story. I don't want to spoil things, I suppose. Intensify, ability strength. Streamline, ability efficiency. You notice here that I haven't got this maxed out, and there's a reason for that. The reason for that is Leading Expertise. Fleeting Expertise will give you ability efficiency and lower your duration. But the max efficiency you can have is 75. So if you have each of these one off maximum, then you will reach your maximum threshold without wasted points, if that makes any sense. At max, this gives you plus 60 ability efficiency, and this gives you plus 30. So if you add them together, it would give you plus 90, but efficiency maxes out at 175%. Next, Stretch. Ups my range a bit to mitigate the lowering range from Narrow-Minded. Fatal Teleport. This just do your teleport, and instead of just teleporting to the target, you teleport to the target, and you do a finisher that does double damage. And if you get a kill, you get 50% of your energy refunded, which is a nice benefit. Prime Continuity. If you don't have Prime Continuity, you can replace this with regular continuity, no problem. Right here, which will give you plus 30 as opposed to plus 50. So, the duration is good with Prime Continuity, don't get me wrong, but honestly, it's going to lower. If I put in regular continuity, that will put my invisibility to about 14.5 seconds. So 14.4 seconds as opposed to... Also worth noting, I haven't maxed out my Prime Continuity because it takes a lot of endo. But it pushes to 16 seconds. So you get... Prime Continuity will get you like about an extra second. 2 seconds. Pretty much an extra 2 seconds if you use Prime Continuity over regular continuity, but regular continuity is fine if you don't have this. Don't try and go out of your way to get this, just for this Ash build. Narrow-Minded. This ups your duration and lowers your ability range. Also worth noting, you could have a higher ranked narrow-minded in here. I like keeping mine about here because I can mitigate the range loss on other builds. For the expertise, I've already gone over. And Constitution. This adds to your ability duration, and it gives you a faster knockdown recovery. The knockdown recovery is whatever, but the ability duration is good. Plus 28% puts you up to the 200 mark we have here. Alternatively, you could use... I just misspelled Augur, obviously. Alternatively, if you have Augur Message, you could replace Constitution with Augur Message. It costs less points, so that's something. It gives you 196% duration. I like Constitution just to get that even 200. However, this is arguably easier to get now than Constitution is, because you can go to the plains fairly early, which is where Augur Message comes from. Comes from the Plains of Eidolon, so you can go there and get this earlier than you could possibly get Constitution. Theoretically, for a new player. But this here is pretty much the build. I don't think I have any others on Ash. No, I don't. And now, as for how he goes in missions. Spies are honestly kind of his bread and butter. He goes fairly well in Spies, because he can go invisible. So, as you would imagine, being able to go invisible, generally a fairly good way of doing Spies. He's essentially a discount Loki, and Loki is good, so a discount Loki is also good. Survival? He can have problems. Notably because, if you're making use, particularly with this build, of his invisibility a lot, survival works on the premise that you're killing enemies. Which he can do with his 4, don't get me wrong, you can kill enemies, so generally he goes a bit better than, say, Loki would do. Also, all of these I'm talking about soloing. If you're doing it in a group, you can use pretty much any Warframe in almost any build. However, for survival, if you're doing it solo, you can kill enemies with Ash, and he does a bit better than Loki in general, because he can stay invisible so he's not likely to die, and he can kill enemies with his 4 or 3. Survival, a bit better than Loki. Spy, a bit worse than Loki. Because I'm going to make the comparison to Loki fairly often with Ash as well, because he is essentially just Loki light in a lot of ways. He's not as good as stealth, but he's better at killing things. It's an odd trade-off. Exterminate. He's quite good at exterminate. You hit 4, you move your mouse around a bunch, and then things die. Not entirely surprising. Mobile defense. He's actually not too bad at mobile defense. You don't need to protect the target for too long, and being able to use your 4 to keep everybody occupied is fairly useful. He also has a very, very light stun when he uses his invisibility, which I suppose can work, but in all honesty, it's not long enough to be able to... I say stun, it's more of a sort of stagger. They don't really get stunned for any duration, but they stagger backwards if they're near you when you turn invisible. But it's not long enough to actually be helpful to actually stop them attacking you. So all in all, he's not great at mobile defense, but he can pull it off simply by killing all the enemies around by using your 4 over and over again. Capture. Perfectly fine at capture. You can go invisible and you can just go up and kill them with your sword, or probably dagger in Ash's case, or just shoot them with your gun. And as you're actually capturing the target, you can be invisible, so no one can attack you. And that's a huge help when you're trying to do a capture target. Because the worst thing is when you're trying to capture someone and then you die because you can't do anything in that capture animation. So if you're invisible, saves you the trouble. Next is defense. Defense, he doesn't go as well as he does in mobile defense because you're standing in the one spot for longer and there's usually more open maps. So there's more areas where people can shoot at you. This footage here I've got is of a card, which is an infested defense. Infested defense he does better on than he does on other defense because the infested have to melee attack the actual defense target. Whereas the others can shoot it, which makes it easier for them to destroy it. However, he goes alright by using his 4, but you may find yourself running out of energy unless you've got Xeneric on. So if you have Xeneric as your active thing, then you probably should be fine because you'll have enough energy all the time. But you will start to see, if you don't, you'll start to see a drop off of energy. And you'll have to be running around collecting energy orbs to make sure that you continue having enough to be able to keep doing your 4. Because to get onto higher level defenses, you need to essentially continuously be doing your 4 for it to work. Excavation. In much the same way as mobile defense, it's a very similar game type in as far as gameplay works. You need to be using your 4 a lot, generally. Also, it's worth noting that if you have good enough weapons, you can probably pull this off just with weapons for a lot of these. However, I'm talking mainly if you're just using sort of basic weapons and the Warframe powers to try and do most of it. And once again, for excavation, Ash's 4 is kind of king. Being invisible is good because it protects you from dying, which is always nice. But the problem with excavation is a lot of the time they'll be attacking the excavator rather than you anyway. So you're unlikely to die, but it's probably better that they aggro you rather than the excavator so it can actually complete excavating. His 4 does a fairly good job of murdering things, so you can sort of stand on top of the excavator, turn your 4 on, murder everything, rinse and repeat. But once again, that's a bit energy hungry, so without Zeneric it's a bit more difficult. Interception I won't really go into. He's not very good at it. I don't even have any footage for this because I couldn't be bothered doing interception because I really hate the game type. However, soloing interception is never really a good idea. If you want to do it really well, Ivara can do it perfectly fine. It's almost boring when Ivara does it. However, he doesn't do too bad simply by, again, rinse and repeat the 4. Hijack, he does fine. Everyone does fine in Hijack. It's not much to say about it. Hive Sabotage, once again, fairly easy. Any Warframe can do Hive Sabotage. There's no one that really strives at it really well. I mean, he does have a slight advantage of being able to go invisible, I suppose, because you could ignore a lot of enemies and just run around and find the nodes and blow them up. So there's that advantage, I guess. Assassinate depends on what assassinate target you're doing. In these videos, I'm not really going to talk about Assassinate, Hive Sabotage, Hijack, or Interception. Because they're so rare, is one thing, but also Assassinate, for instance, it's going to be different with every single boss, so I'm not going to go through every single boss. Rescue. He goes really well, because, as I said, discount Loki. So he can go invisible, pretty much the best thing you can get for a rescue. Because you can do all the hacking and stuff you need to do, no one's going to be shooting you whilst you're doing it. Fairly self-explanatory. He's also fairly fast. Not as fast as Loki, but he's fairly fast at getting around the battlefield, so you can just sprint to the end and your rescue target will teleport behind you. That's actually something worth noting for newer players, is that you don't have to really babysit that rescue target. The slower you go, the more likely he is to get shot, and the more likely he is to die. You can revive him, so that's always something. But if you just book it to the end as fast as you humanly can, chances are the rescue target will survive, or at the very least you'll get to the end before he dies, in which case you just automatically complete the mission. And finally we have Sabotage. Now Sabotage he goes really well at. Mainly because Sabotage involves, one, being able to be invisible helps a lot with a lot of Sabotage targets, and secondly, he can kill lots of things fairly quickly. So if you have a large room, Sabotage usually ends up with a large room with lots of guys in it. So if you just set them all up to do 4, and then you can deal with actually doing the Sabotage, and just while your specters are flying around and murdering everything, it makes it fairly simple. So that's all the major game types. It is worth noting that when I was checking that all these game types were actually still existing, in the, what could I call it here, the codex, in the list of missions, deception is still a thing. I don't think it actually is, though. I don't think there's any deception missions left. I think they were replaced with sabotage. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but, like, I haven't seen a deception mission for, like, there's none anywhere. For, like, 2 years. They got rid of them all. And they replaced them with, like, mobile defense and sabotage, I think, was what replaced deception. But it's still in the codex for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe it is still a thing, and it's just, like, on one node or something that I don't know about. But I'm fairly certain it doesn't exist anymore. Anyway. That's all for Ash. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions and or comments about my build, and say how crappy it is, for those who play Ash more often than I do, let me know in the comments. And with that, I shall see you next time.